근데 공거에는 영어와도 베그 출러 심지 다나더니 로정 쉬어래 다른 porque 다나 다리 저지도 앞에 가보쇼 대나 다 제가 베르그 춘도 지 로정 쉬어다 냠스 레야 가상의 기근 아이얼 뜻자와도 거는 되네 공연 들어왔대 뜻자 고치그 짐슨 시리즈는 송 보바가 시험 봐 몸보서 그 당상 베그 추도는 베그 정리도 베실 전부요 말했었는데 말은 돌교래 다트는 지 시험 봐 몸보서 그는 특히 나라 그런 소 냠용도 그런 소 지마 정고 상고요 근데 나 제가 베그 추도 로종 시티가 무일 가세게 근데 로종다는 때 냠내시요나 체랑라 떡은 소화가 쳤다나 판박가세요
So, objectively speaking, I think there are as many different motivations for studying Tibetan Buddhism as there are different people who study Tibetan Buddhism. But within those, if we generalize a little, I think there are some people who, at least initially, were drawn to the practice of Tibetan Buddhism through an encounter with one of the many teachers who have now taught in different places in the West. And through their interest in the practice of Tibetan Buddhism, they then found themselves drawn into further study, perhaps to learn the language better or to develop a more sophisticated understanding of the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. So one of the main initial starting points for many people is from their own practice. Their own interest in the practice. And I would say a second general area of motivation for many people is the sense that Tibet has a very rich and valuable cultural tradition, and through the dramatic changes in Tibetan culture in the 20th century, some of those traditions are endangered, and there's a wish to aid in the preservation of that culture as it undergoes all of these very, very dramatic changes of more recent history. So some people, I think, are motivated by a sense of participating in an attempt to help preserve some of these things before they're lost. And then perhaps a third and final area, if we generalize of motivations, there are some people who are very, very intelligent, and they're mostly motivated by finding a field of study that will not be easily exhausted, that they won't become bored from. And so many other subjects that we study, hundreds or thousands of people have already written about those things. If you want to study Shakespeare, there are a dozen books about every play that Shakespeare wrote already. But when we look at Tibetan literature, there are thousands and thousands of texts that have never been translated, that people outside of Tibet have never studied. So it seems this vast treasury of material to study, and the subject matter itself, just as it is vast, it is also deep and profound. So that people who are drawn to that field of study find an inexhaustible field that they could explore at least for one academic career, if not many, many lifetimes, without even feeling that they've gone very deep. So many people are drawn by that as well. And then personally, from my own side, I was very fortunate that my mother's older brother, my uncle, was someone who became a student of the Sorma Trungpa here in the United States, and had a very close relationship with him. And when I was a child, I would hear stories about my uncle and his guru, and this was very different from anything else in my world. And I became really fascinated by those stories and always imagined what this person must be like. And when I became older, I started to read some books that the students of Trungpa Rinpoche had published from his teachings. And everything that I read, the more I thought about it, the more I thought, this makes more sense to me than anything else that I read. And I want to learn more about all of these things. And when I was a college student, I had a period in my life when I was very confused about what I wanted to study, what interested me. And I was, again, very fortunate to participate in a study abroad program, a semester devoted to Tibetan studies. And I traveled and I lived with a Tibetan family in India. and started to learn to speak Tibetan and began to really study Tibetan culture. And from that point, what had been a curiosity that I had almost caught fire, and I was completely consumed with a wish to learn more and more. Again, I glimpsed the vastness, really, of the Tibetan Buddhist tradition and Tibetan culture as a whole, and that was what motivated me. Really, I wanted to study the language, to be able to learn more and read texts and speak with teachers, and that was my motivation more than the pursuit of an academic career. It was a means to be able to learn more, and then I found myself, after a number of years, qualified. My professional qualifications were to teach Buddhism to university students or to wash dishes in a restaurant, and I really didn't have any other qualifications. So of those two, this seemed much better for a livelihood.